What you are about to hear is not just a story about a wrestling match. It is the story of a woman who walked into enemy territory, stood in the middle of the ring alone, and dared the most dominant champion in WWE to come and get her. It is a story about what happens when a force of nature meets an unstoppable storm and neither one is willing to blink first. This is Smackdown. WrestleMania season is in full effect, and everything just exploded. Welcome back to Wrestling Impact, the channel where we break down every moment that matters in the world of WWE. If you are new here, buckle in because today we are covering the most intense, chaotic, emotionally charged segment that SmackDown has delivered in months. We are talking about Rhea Ripley going directly into the lion's den, calling out Jade Cargill, B-Fab, and Mickin, and what followed was nothing short of a war. Drop a like on this video right now if you already know this WrestleMania 42 match is going to be one for the history books, and let's get into it. To understand the magnitude of what happened on the March 27th episode of SmackDown, we have to rewind the clock. Because this did not start with a handshake and a contract signing. This started weeks ago when the seeds of chaos were quietly being planted and nobody even saw it coming. Jade Cargill. The name alone carries weight. Since winning the Queen of the Ring tournament in 2025, defeating Asuka in a tournament final that nobody will soon forget, Jade had been on an absolute warpath. She captured the WWE Women's Championship from Tiffany Stratton on the November 1st edition of Saturday Night's Main Event, and from that moment forward, she wore the title like a crown that no one, and we mean no one, had any business touching. 7 months without a singles loss. That is not a statistic. That is a statement. That is Jade Cargill telling the entire women's division that the bar has been raised, and they are all too short to reach it. Then came Rhea Ripley, the Eradicator. The woman who walks into rooms and immediately changes the atmospheric pressure. Ripley had not held a singles championship since March of 2025. Which in the wrestling world can feel like a lifetime. But if you thought a year without gold would slow Mami down, you clearly have not been paying attention. Rhea entered the 2026 Women's Elimination Chamber match and dismantled 5 other competitors: Alexa Bliss, Kiana James, Asuka, Raquel Rodriguez, and Tiffany Stratton one by one, surviving the most brutal structure in WWE to earn her WrestleMania title shot. When she walked out of that chamber, the only question left was, when those two worlds collide, who walks out standing? The first sparks flew on March 6. SmackDown opened with an electricity in the air that you could feel through the screen. Rhea Ripley stood in the center of the ring, still riding the wave of her chamber victory, addressing the crowd and the champion in no uncertain terms. The message was simple and devastating. She was coming for the title. She was coming for Jade. And she was taking it by force. Those words, by force, were not just a catchphrase. They were a promise. And then, just as Rhea was getting into her rhythm, the champion herself appeared. Jade Cargill, gold draped over her shoulder, walked down that ramp with the kind of calm that only comes from knowing you are the most dangerous person in any room you enter. The two women stood across from each other, and for a moment, the arena went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that happens when a crowd gets bored. The kind of quiet that happens when everybody in the building collectively holds their breath because they know something historic is brewing. The war of words that followed was sharp and surgical. Jade made it clear Rhea was on her turf. She was just a guest on SmackDown, and guests do not take what belongs to the host. But Rhea leaned into the fire. She looked Jade dead in the eyes and told the champion exactly what was coming for her at WrestleMania 42 in Las Vegas. That exchange set the tone for everything that followed. This was not just a rivalry. This was two apex predators circling each other, measuring distance, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. 1 week later, on March 13th, things escalated again. Jade was in the ring, having just taken out Mickin, yes, the same Mickin who would later become her ally when Rhea materialized at ringside. The confrontation that erupted between them was raw and unscripted in its energy, and Rhea said something on that microphone that made social media collectively lose its mind. She looked at the champion and, in the most Rhea Ripley way imaginable, promised to make Jade hers. The fans roared. The champion's jaw tightened. And underneath all the bravado, you could see it, this was personal now. Then came March 20th, and with it, the first real moment where the story twisted into something darker. Because on that night, SmackDown delivered a gut punch that nobody saw coming. Mickin and B-Fab, two women who had been competing as independent entities with their own goals and grudges, suddenly appeared alongside Jade Cargill. And together, all three of them beat down Rhea Ripley. Let that sink in for a second. 3-on-1. The WWE Women's Champion and her newly formed alliance, targeting the #1 contender in a coordinated, calculated assault. Mickin's grievance was clear: she felt overlooked. She had been grinding and clawing for years, working her way up from the bottom of the card, and somehow, no matter what she did, the spotlight always seemed to find Rhea Ripley instead. B-Fab echoed those sentiments. And Jade? Jade simply provided the opportunity. She extended the hand, they took it, and now there was a three-headed monster standing between Rhea Ripley and her destiny. The wrestling world reacted instantly. Fans flooded social media. Was this a calculated heel move by Jade to protect her title heading into WrestleMania? Was Mickens' frustration genuine, or was she being manipulated? And most importantly, would Rhea Ripley walk back into Smackdown the following week and demand answers? Of course she would. Because that is exactly who Rhea Ripley is. March 27th. The night everything came to a head. SmackDown was already loaded with massive moments: Cody Rhodes returning, Randy Orton continuing his descent into something dark and violent. But when Rhea Ripley's music hit and the Eradicator walked out onto that stage, the building shifted. She had been attacked a week prior. She had been jumped 3-on-1. And she came back to SmackDown anyway. Not cautiously. Not with backup. Alone. Because Mami does not need an army. She took the microphone and addressed what happened the week before with a kind of quiet fury that is uniquely Rhea's. She said she never expected integrity from Jade Cargill, but what genuinely surprised her, what cut a little deeper than she wanted to show, was seeing Micken and B-Fab stoop to that level. She called it desperation. She called it a choice made by women who knew they could not get what they wanted on their own. And then, with WrestleMania hanging in the air like a storm cloud over Las Vegas, she looked directly down that ramp and called them all out. The response was immediate. Jade Cargill appeared at the top of the stage flanked by B-Fab and Micken. The crowd erupted in boos, a wall of sound that the trio walked through like they owned every square inch of that arena. Jade's expression was unreadable. Not angry. Not anxious. Simply certain. B-Fab grabbed a microphone and tried to make her case, but the crowd drowned her out with a chorus of hostility that made every word she said harder to hear. She pushed through it, calling Rhea a selfish coward, accusing the contender of taking opportunities that others deserved. Micken backed her up, the emotion in her voice cutting through the noise. She had worked for years in that industry, grinding on the independents, clawing for every opportunity, and yet somehow Rhea was always the one standing in the spotlight. Then B-Fab dropped the reveal that gave the whole segment its backbone. This was Jade's plan. Jade recruited them, and they took the offer because in Jade's world, loyalty was currency and she paid well. Cargill stepped to the microphone one final time, her voice cool and controlled, and told Rhea that if she wanted a fight, they were ready. She reminded Ripley with unmistakable condescension that she was just a guest on SmackDown, and that guests did not show up to the host's house and make demands. The war of words pushed to a boiling point, and what came next was one of those moments that reminds you why SmackDown is must-see television. The confrontation led directly to an impromptu match: Rhea Ripley versus B-Fab, right then and there. And Rhea did not hesitate for a single second. She shed the jacket, cracked her knuckles, and stepped between those ropes with the energy of someone who had been waiting all week to hit something. The match itself was a showcase of everything that makes Rhea Ripley exceptional as a performer. Even against a legitimate physical threat in B-Fab, Rhea looked dominant, composed, and dangerous. She controlled the pace, absorbed whatever offense B-Fab threw at her with barely a flinch, and slowly turned up the pressure with that methodical brutality that has made her one of the most watchable wrestlers on the planet. The crowd was locked in, chanting her name, feeding her the energy she needed. But this was never going to end cleanly. That was never the plan. As Rhea built momentum and the match seemed to be heading toward its conclusion, Jade Cargill broke from her position at ringside and got involved. The referee called for the disqualification. Rhea Ripley wins by DQ. But in the world of professional wrestling, when the numbers are 3-1 and the opposition has a champion at its head, a technical victory means absolutely nothing. What followed the bell was the real match. Rhea Ripley, fire in her eyes, stepped outside the ring and connected with a massive big boot to Micken, sending her sprawling. The crowd exploded. She re-engaged with Jade, getting right back in the champion's face, and for a breathless moment it seemed like the tables might turn. But then B-Fab jumped back in, and Rhea met her with a brutal headbutt that echoed through the arena. The fight spilled everywhere in the ring, outside the ring, back inside again, and the chaos was electric. Jade seized the moment. She grabbed Rhea and drove her spine first into the apron with the kind of impact that made everyone watching wince simultaneously. The numbers game had officially taken over. Micken and B-Fab regrouped, cutting off every escape route, boxing Rhea in as Jade positioned herself for the kill. Even as Rhea fired back another headbutt, another attempt to flip the script, there were simply too many bodies. She set Jade up for the Riptide, getting under that 6-foot frame with everything she had, but Micken and B-Fab broke it up before the move could land. And then came the finish. Jade Cargill, standing tall over a downed Rhea Ripley, lifted her for the Jaded, the devastating slam that has ended the momentum of every opponent who has stood across from her in the last 7 months and put Ripley down in the center of the Smackdown ring. The 3 women stood over Rhea, gold gleaming in the lights, while the crowd rained down its displeasure. It was a visual that was designed to infuriate the champion and her allies, standing tall, sending a message 22 days before WrestleMania 42. The message was loud and unmistakable. Jade Cargill does not fight fair. Jade Cargill does not fight alone when she does not have to, and Jade Cargill is walking into Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas with every possible advantage stacked in her favor. But here is the thing about moments like these in professional wrestling: the beatdown is not the end of the story. The beatdown is the fuel. Every time Rhea Ripley gets put down and gets back up, she comes back meaner, sharper, and more locked in than she was before. This is not new information. She has stood across the ring at WrestleMania and defeated Asuka to win her first major championship. She came back from injury and reclaimed her throne. She survived an elimination chamber that would have finished most wrestlers. And she walked back into SmackDown this week alone, with no backup, no safety net, knowing full well what Jade and her allies were capable of. That is who she is. That is why this match at WrestleMania 42 is appointment viewing. Think about the storytelling here, because it is genuinely beautiful in its brutality. Jade Cargill is the undefeated, physically overwhelming, methodically dominant champion who has added numbers to her corner as the biggest night of the year approaches. She is playing chess while everyone else plays checkers. She recruited allies with legitimate grievances, women who had real reasons to feel overlooked, real reasons to align themselves with the most powerful force in the women's division. Micken's frustration is understandable. B-Fab's eagerness to finally be part of something meaningful is relatable. Jade simply provided the vehicle. Against the backdrop stands Rhea Ripley, a woman who has already proven she can win at WrestleMania, already proven she can be the last one standing in any environment, and who now has the added motivation of walking into Las Vegas with something to prove, not just to the champion, but to every person who thought a 3-on-1 beatdown would break her spirit. Spoiler alert: it did not. The road to WrestleMania 42 runs through SmackDown, and it runs through the wreckage of everything Jade Cargill and her allies have left in their wake. On April 18th and 19th, inside Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, the WWE Women's Championship will be on the line. And on one side of that ring will stand a champion who has done everything possible to make sure she walks in with every advantage. On the other side will stand a woman who has made it clear she is taking that title with force. No alliances. No strategies. No safety nets. Just force. This match has the potential to be one of the defining women's championship matches in recent WrestleMania history. These two athletes are physical specimens who operate on a level that very few performers in wrestling, men or women, can match. Jade's power and precision combined with Ripley's ferocity and resilience creates a matchup that is hard to script a bad version of. The question is not whether it will be good. The question is how far they are willing to go, and how the story ends. But we are not in Las Vegas yet. We are still in the build. And if the last 3 weeks of SmackDown have shown us anything, it is that Jade Cargill is not interested in a fair fight heading into WrestleMania, and Rhea Ripley is not interested in waiting until the premium live event to extract her revenge. Something is going to break before April 18th. The temperature in this rivalry is too high, the stakes are too massive, and the personalities involved are too explosive for either woman to wait patiently for the official match to start. The question is what form the next escalation takes, and when it happens, Wrestling Impact will be here to break it down for you in full. If you made it this far, you already know what this channel is about: bringing you the most compelling, in-depth coverage of the storylines and moments that define WWE in real time. This is the WrestleMania 42 season, and it is delivering at every turn. Hit that like button if you believe Rhea Ripley gets her revenge in Las Vegas. Drop a comment below and tell us, does Mami overcome the numbers game at WrestleMania? Or does Jade Cargill walk out of Allegiant Stadium still the most dominant champion in the women's division? And if you are not subscribed to Wrestling Impact yet, now is the time, because this story is just getting started, and you do not want to miss a